Look, every single business, and I mean every business, is going to have service failures. It's going to happen. But what if I told you that those failures, those moments you dread, aren't just problems you need to fix? What if they're actually your single biggest opportunity to create die-hard loyal customers? Well, today, we're going to break down exactly how to turn your worst mistakes into your most powerful loyalty-building moments, all based on the amazing research in the Customer Science Handbook.
Okay, let's kick things off with this absolute gem from Professor Alexander Chernev. Here's the thing about human psychology, right? The sting of a bad experience, that feeling of being let down, is so much more powerful and lasts so much longer than the temporary high of a good one. It's just how we're wired. And that's why getting a handle on service failures isn't just a nice to have. It's everything.
So, where do these frustrating experiences actually come from? You might think it's just bad luck, a random slip-up. But the research tells us something very different. It turns out they almost always come from 5 very specific, very predictable disconnects inside your business. We call them service gaps. Let's break them down, because once you can see these blind spots, you can start to fix them.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to this one core conflict. Seriously, pretty much every service failure starts right here. The moment what you, as a company, think your customers want is completely different from what your customers actually want and expect. This one mismatch, it's the source code for all the problems that follow.
Okay, so gap 1 is what I like to call the lost in translation gap. So imagine you're running a restaurant. You might be convinced that your customers want this huge, sprawling menu with tons of fancy options. But in reality, all they really care about is getting their food fast and having it taste the same every time. See, that gap between what you think they want and what they truly crave, that's the market insight gap. And it's the shaky foundation that everything else is built on.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because this next gap can happen even if you've totally nailed gap 1. So you've done your homework, you know exactly what your customers want, but you just don't build the system to actually give it to them. It's a failure of design, not a failure of understanding. You know the what, but you fumble the how.
And this is exactly what that looks like in the real world, right? On paper, you get it. You know speed is the name of the game. But then, there are no real rules or processes to make sure your team is fast. You know you'll get slammed during the lunch rush, but you keep understaffing, leaving your team totally overwhelmed. The knowledge is there, but the systems to support it, they're just missing. You've basically designed a system that's destined to fail.
So, this is where the rubber really meets the road. It's all about the delivery. You could have the most brilliant, perfectly designed system in the world, but if your frontline team, the people actually talking to your customers, if they aren't trained or empowered or even just motivated to make it happen, the whole thing just collapses. This gap is all about that messy, critical, human element. Ah, yes, the classic bait and switch gap. Your marketing department is out there painting this beautiful picture of a 5-star white glove experience. Your ads promise the world, but when the customer actually shows up, the reality is more like a 2-star do-it-yourself kind of deal. You've basically written a check with your advertising that your operations team just can't cash, and that's a surefire recipe for disappointment. And that brings us to the final gap. This is the big one. This is the gap that the customer actually feels. It's the grand total of all the other failures combined. After everything, their own needs, your marketing promises, the actual service they got, they're left with this feeling that what they got just didn't measure up to what they expected. This is the moment it all becomes real for them.
Okay, so we've run the diagnostics. A gap happened, a promise got broken, and now you have an unhappy customer. But what happens next? Well, that's what defines everything. The mistake has already been made, but believe it or not, the final outcome is still totally in your hands. This is that critical moment of truth.
And let's be real, in the age of social media, this isn't just a fun fact. It's a terrifying reality. A single well-told horror story on Twitter or TikTok can catch fire and spread to millions in a matter of hours, doing way more damage than 100 5-star reviews could ever hope to fix. The potential for fallout is huge, but so is the opportunity.
You see, every single negative experience puts you at a fork in the road, and your action, or your inaction, determines which path you go down. Do you resolve it and turn that unhappy person into a raving fan who tells everyone how you made things right? Or do you ignore it and create an enemy who makes it their mission to tell everyone to stay away? The choice is literally yours.
All right, so how do we make sure we always take the right path at that fork in the road? Well, it's not about luck, and it's not about just hoping for the best. It's about having a proven strategy. So let's dive into the actual science of what's called service recovery.
This 6-step playbook is your roadmap, and notice where it starts, with diagnosis. You have to figure out the real source of the pain. Is it about the product not working or about them feeling disrespected? Once you know that, every other step flows from there. You find the right fix, you do it fast, you tell them what's happening, and, this is huge, you just own it. You accept responsibility. And through it all, you make sure the whole process feels fair. That's the key.
And now we've arrived at the most powerful and honestly, the most counterintuitive idea in this whole discussion. If you only take one thing away today, let it be this, because this can completely change how you look at every single customer complaint you ever get again.
I know, it sounds kind of crazy, right? How can a major screw-up actually make a customer more loyal? Well, think about it. When you handle a failure brilliantly, you're doing more than just fixing a problem. You're proving to that customer that you care and that if things go wrong again, you'll have their back. You're not just solving an issue, you're building deep, unshakable trust.
So as you head back to your teams in your business, I want you to ask yourself this one question. Are you just putting out fires? Are you just fixing problems as they pop up? Or are you looking at every single failure as a rare, precious opportunity to create your most passionate, most loyal advocates? The choice and that incredible opportunity is all yours.